Okay, and we are rolling. Hello, everyone. I am here with JayDreamerZ.
That's me.
Z.
Hey.
And so I saw on your website that it said Zed. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. How you said you were like the last of the dreamers or something like that.
Yeah. So that's from a biblical prophecy that talks about how in the last days, um, you know, in short, young men and old men would start to prophesy. They would start to have visions and dreams. And that's really a lot of what I focus on, and I'm very much interested in and always have been, is prophecies about the end times. And
Mm-hmm.
equally just as much, the creation stories and the beginning of things too. And I just knew intuitively that that was me. That's I've always had dreams, like really vivid dreams that are clearly messages to me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, I started kind of considering them and building a little dream library in the back of my mind as I remembered these things. And it's like watching a really deep movie where you walk away and the movie spoke to you, but
Mm-hmm.
as you get distracted by going through the hoops of life, like the message starts to kind of fade into the back of the mind somewhere. And I always try to push it to the forefront as much as I possibly can.
It's really cool. I don't know if we're kindred spirits or not, but I really love to meditate, and I got into a whole bunch of like new age stuff, like not knowing that it's really not like you can be opening up some dark altars, and so then I switched it to biblical prayer, but I still see things, I still have like visions. I don't have prophecy, but I find it to be um profound, like you're talking about, and like a whole other world, and it's hard to describe it sometimes,
Yeah.
and it makes me think that it's very similar to something like ayahuasca or psychedelics or something like that. Have you ever done any personal prophecy, like as far as things that you have been given?
No, not as far as like predictions. I have prophecies that exist inside of me. They're for me. They're
Mm-hmm.
messages for me. They're intuitive things that I feel and that I know, and I allow my path to be led in certain directions. Um, I feel like the world today, they are too used to going to McDonald's and fast food spirituality or fast food research or fast food whatever it may be. um like I intuit things. I know things that I know that are just my own personal knowledge or whatever. I'm never out there trying to like say what I know is what others should know or whatnot. I'm just following my own path, and I realize that we're all connected and following our own paths, and that we all hold pieces of a bigger picture. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we all have little pieces of the puzzle, and I'm going around seeing the truth in everything and taking other people's stuff that resonates with my piece so that I can try to make that puzzle piece bigger and see the bigger picture.
I love it. And so I'm getting some feedback from the chat saying that your microphone is low. I can hear you okay. But maybe if you could do
Yeah, let
something.
me
Oh,
see.
there, that's
I
perfect.
mean,
I
I
do
could
I do notice
put
a
it
difference.
closer to my face.
Yeah. Tends to work better that way. And so I love that. And it's something that I've only had, and I've talked about it before on my show with somebody else. I don't remember who it was, but I have had kind of an end times dream. And it was the reverse of what they say happens in the end times. But who knows? I mean, I have no idea if it's real or if anything will come of it. And I really do kind of lean more towards the little season now. Do you have an opinion on the little season?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Uh, well, once again, for throughout this whole thing, I'm going to be speaking from my path and my presentation.
Of
You know what I mean? Like
course.
my perspective. Uh, the devil's in charge right now. The devil is literally the charge that is the electromagnetic charge on the surface of the world where we live today. That today our world has been electromagnetically flipped upside down, and everything that is within this world, because it's a closed system, resonates with that reversal, in which in reality it's a polarity reversal if we are speaking electromagnetically.
And
Can
so
you
like
still hear me
Redshift,
okay?
like
I'm
Redshift.
worried about the microphone.
No, you're let me see. No one's complained about it again, so you should be good.
Okay.
And I could notice a difference. So
I'll just get really, I don't want it to like, I don't want to mess
yeah,
it up by being too
I'll
close.
I'll let you know if it's too loud or too quiet, or at least I'll try to.
Okay.
And so just to kind of rewind a little bit, there's probably going to be a good amount of people here that know who you are, but there'll also be people that don't. And so I think it would be great if you could just, first of all, I love the fact that you started your channel completely not even trying to start a channel, but actually doing it as a legacy of love for your son. And so I would love for you to just kind of share how that came about.
I didn't even know what YouTube was. I never heard of a YouTube. And I was talking to some people about how I was going to have, a little boy. And I already had a daughter, and I was thinking about like how I wanted to give them the gift of myself. I wanted to share with them um, all of my research, all of my knowledge, all of my thoughts on things, but I didn't want to like journal out a whole library's worth of information. Sounded like a huge undertaking, and I didn't know what to do or how to do it. And so someone recommended, why don't you just start, sharing with them on YouTube? It'll record a million videos for you, and you could just have it forever, and then they could just, watch, and you can section it off. So I was like, wow, that's a great idea. So I did. I did my very first video with a really cheap little tablet or whatever, and I just kind of balanced it on the table. And I had a little whiteboard, and I was drawing out. My first presentation was a teaching on the glyphs that are used within the Colorado State Seal. And I have figured out, I don't know how many other people may have come to the same conclusion, but I figured out that it's a message, and it's a hieroglyphic message that's read from the top down, and it's straight out of the Book of Enoch, and it's literally the pact that the fallen angels had made with one another about ruling over mankind. And um, it's one of those mind blowing things that I wanted to share with. I wanted to get it off my chest too. A lot of what I do is really just like it's therapeutic for me to get to talk to myself at the very least about these things, and I will go back and watch my videos. I'm like, yeah, that guy's good. I like that. That makes sense. But anyways, that was my first video. I just kept doing it. And then, uh, I didn't think other people were going to like tune in or watch,
Right.
or I'm like, wow, people liked that video. That's cool. There's a little thumbs up there. Someone left a comment. Oh, cool. That's awesome. And I just kept on doing it. And then next thing I know, a lot of people. There's 100 subscribers, and then 1,000, and then 10,000, and pretty soon everyone was insisting that you should write a book. You should write this down and compile this, and I will buy it. And I'm like, oh, haha, sure, I'll write a book sometime someday. And eventually enough pressure came, and I've always wanted to write a book anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I ended up doing that. Sort of compiling all of my research and all of my theories, because I didn't know where to start with my YouTube channel. I want to talk about everything because it's all interesting. There's so many amazing, crazy, interesting, mind-boggling, fringe things that there are to life. I want to talk about everything, but the problem is not everybody wants to just tune in and listen to every single
Yes,
random
that's
topic.
kind of my problem, but I just do it anyway. I'm like, well, that's interesting to me, so I'm going to do it, and I'll get 200 views, and then I'll have someone like my friend Dr. Laura Sanger on, who everyone loves, and she gets 40,000 views for something. But it's just the stuff that I'm interested in, and I just don't. I guess I just don't care. If somebody doesn't want to tune in, I'm not mad at them. But I do see that it's a benefit if you want to build your channel to have kind of a niche. And so
Right.
what would you say your niche is?
Well, I figured out, and I took all of my research and all of the things that I saw that were connected, and really used the tool of comparative mythology throughout religions and myths and history and hidden history, prophecies, and everything from fairy tales to fiction to fantasy. And my niche is I build bridges. I'm a bridge builder. And the bridge is from what seems to be impossible to what is possible, what seems to be fantastic to what is fact. You know what I mean? From science fiction to actual science and reconciling things that just seemed like fairy tales and fantasy and fiction, and what we basically is what's strewn to us today as lies, that falsities and stuff in a world that's upside down. That means that there must be some truth there. So I take all of these things that I started studying many decades ago, from giants, the Nephilim, and the Old Testament anomalies and cosmology and stuff, every subject you can imagine. And every time I would dig deeper down that rabbit hole, they all got closer and closer and closer together. And that really brought me to my books, which I title Ancient Oblivion, The Plasma Apocalypse. Ancient Oblivion being the things that we have forgotten about in our ancient past,
Good.
the Plasma Apocalypse being this cyclical event, which is the creation and destruction event of our world, that ties everything together. Everything from the beginning to the very end is interwoven throughout that never-ending story.
You're the Rainbow Bridge. And so when you think about, like, when you look at your channel, obviously if your son is young, it's all going to be kind of over his head. So you were thinking more of for the future,
Oh yeah,
or are you
it's not over
teaching?
his head. No,
Okay,
he
so you're
trust me.
teaching him
He
as he
learned.
goes.
He knows more than anybody in the world except for me about the things that I'm talking to everyone else about. So he's on top of it.
Oh my gosh. Is that why you have the cute jellyfish?
Yes, actually.
And so are all of your videos rated for kids?
No,
Okay. So you
no, no,
do
no.
do some that are not.
None of my videos are for kids.
Oh, okay. So you
Uh,
you just say
yeah,
no to all of it.
yeah.
But
Forget
it's just for your
that.
kid.
I'm speaking to the mature-minded. This
Right.
is for the kid within us, within all of us. It's not like I'm sitting there like, oh, this is a kid's channel or whatever. No, I'm a kid. I'm a child. Like
Yeah.
I don't
We
care if
all
I
are.
have a beard or any of that. Like, so as a part of these cycles that happen, we go through cycles of longer living times and shorter living times. Right now, we live in the time of shorter living, where lifespans have and do constantly decrease and decrease and decrease. And the opposite of that is when we go into this cycle where lifespans increase and people live for hundreds of years, depending on where in the world and certain conditions and stuff. But basically, for example, if you return to Hyperborea, which is the name of my second book, if you return to the Garden of Eden, you'll live for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the Bible makes mention of this too, which is really kind of where I started my journey, was with the Bible. But it makes mention of insinuating that there will come a time whenever, if a person doesn't reach 100 years old, they'll be considered like cursed, that something's wrong with them. That's because people lived much longer than 100 years old. 100 years old is like reaching puberty to someone who lives for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
So in my mind, when I look at myself and the world around me, everyone else, there are no exceptions at all. We're all literally children. We just have this disease of advanced aging because of this sinful condition that
Yeah.
exists in a world of exponentially increasing entropy and a lack of energy in the world, or spirit. But I think that that's going to all change
I
because
was
it's
just going to ask
cyclical.
you that. When do you project, if you were to guess, when that cycle will shift into a longer cycle?
After the apocalypse happens.
So you do think there will be an apocalypse.
Yeah, for sure.
So you don't think there was a little season.
Oh, I do. I believe that these things are cyclical. So the little season to
Oh,
me
I see.
is a part of a cycle. There have been many
Got it.
little seasons in the past from my perspective, and there have
Mhm.
been many millennial reigns of Christ in the past from my perspective. And biblically speaking, if you go to like Bible school and stuff, they'll refer to this as a Christophany, or the appearance of Christ throughout the Old Testament. And we can see these patterns of ebb and flow, these rhythms. It's some people call it the law of cycles and rhythms, but
Okay.
this happens uh, throughout our world, that we go through periods of creation and destruction, life and death. Right now we're in a time, from my perspective, of death, of no energy, a lack of spirit. But once we hit a crescendo, or the rock bottom,
Mhm.
spiritually speaking, or energetically speaking even, it will shift. And that happens, in different ways, but it revolves around the energy of the actual world that we live in and are a part of, shifting and flipping around. And so I'll give you an example of this. You can see this in the written record. Whenever you look at the direction that people are writing in, right? So if they're predominantly left-handed, then
Hmm.
they're predominantly right-brained, which is more the creative side of your brain and has a lot to do with deciphering and communicating using pictures and relates to creativity and stuff. The left brain is more robotic or reptilian, I guess
Analytic.
sometimes people might say, yeah, analytical, more mathematical too.
Hmm.
So if you're more right-brained, which corresponds to the particular energy that's around us and surrounds us and resonates through us, then the predominant hand people will use will be their left hand. You know, left-handed people are more creative. It's just understood. And when you're left-handed, you write from right to left. That would be natural. That would be a natural way to write because you don't want to smudge in the ancient world. You don't want to smudge or mess up what you just drew, so you need to draw in the opposite direction, right? So it's unnatural for someone who's left-handed to
Right.
draw in the way that we drew now because they would just smudge and mess that all up. Anyways, my point is you can see the direction of the glyphs literally flipping upside down with and corresponding to a polarity shift in this world where the actual energy has been reversed and we had a change of charge or who's in charge of this world. So we have a golden age, which is represented by Christ and Jesus, you know, the millennial rule, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, which there's always anomalies and exceptions even to that. Even biblically speaking in Revelation, there's outside of the city where the dogs are and the wicked and the immoral, moral and stuff like that. And I see these patterns all throughout history. So specifically, the last time that I see this as a major event where there was a clear type of a golden age was actually during the Dark Ages,
Right.
and we're taught that that was not
We
the
don't know
opposite
anything
of a
about
golden
it.
age. Yeah, who knows? I don't know
I
anything about
can't
the golden
remember that
age.
awesome time when Christ was here.
Yeah, but not just whenever we had this strong Christian representative, and that manifested in cartoonified human figures like people will pop up from time to time like Charlemagne or Alexander or things like that. Prester John is a good example too. But we also had examples of monsters, literal actual monsters that were recorded within bestiaries that were official church doctrines or monastery drawings and diaries and records. And in addition to actual literal monsters, which today they'll say, oh, they just didn't know what a gorilla was. They just didn't know what a lion was. And they sucked at drawing, their artistic skills lacked. No, not at all. Their pictures of the flora and the fauna were completely different
Yes.
during that entire time. They even drew the sky a different color during those times. And they have mutant tribes of human beings that lived around the world. You have like the Blimmies that didn't have any heads or whatever, like they just have
Hmm.
shoulders or whatever. You have two-headed people, cyclopses and stuff. These are genetic mutations that happen outside of a protected area, which I believe to be the Garden of Eden, which I believe is physically actually a terrestrial paradise on Earth, that appears sometimes and then sort of disappears, and it coincides with these cataclysms. But outside of Eden, it's highly radioactive, and that's outside of the city of the saints or the camp of the saints. And those beings and creatures and humanoids and everything that live there become mutated. Like, anyways, it's a huge, it's all connected, is what I'm saying, as
Yeah,
far
yeah,
as
yeah.
like the season of Satan and then the
Yes. No,
millennial
I've
rule.
never
You know
heard
what I mean?
anyone share it the way you do. It's interesting. And so when the original question though was what kind of cycle does it look like to you? Like if you were to be guessing, or is it in the stars? Because there's some great books about the heavens declaring everything. Um, and do you run into that, like where things are lined up at certain zodiacs or certain star
You mean like are there like celestial indicators
yeah, like
that
I'm wondering
like at
how
moments?
like how you can look at it and go, well, I'm thinking the point where we hit rock bottom will come in 20 years, in 5 years, and
Oh, oh no, no, no. I will never be able to tell you when. Nobody will ever be able to tell you when. Just I mean, there's so many reasons why. Jesus himself said, nobody knows the day or the
Right.
hour. You know, I put a lot of
Yeah.
faith into his teachings and promises and words and whatnot. But also, just mathematically speaking, through chaos theory and the butterfly effect, there's no possible way anybody can predict when it's going to happen. But we are given omens. We are given signs and indicators and taught to look at Mother Nature
And
and the world
seasons.
that houses
Yeah.
us as someone who is about to give birth. So just like I would watch, I can't tell you when that woman's going to give birth, but I sure can tell you that she's really close.
Right.
That it's any day now. That you should probably start getting the nursery ready. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Which is how we should be living. Well, that's how I feel I should be living my life. Is, you know, my favorite answer to like when people ask me, when's the apocalypse going to happen? They ask Jesus the same thing. That's the first question, you know.
Yeah.
When's it when? When it tell us, master. And I'll have some fries with that too, with my fast food, just give me the answer kind of lifestyle. No. The day after tomorrow is when it's going to happen. That's when it's going to that's I mean there was a movie by the same name
It'll
and
happen now
that's
sometime in the future.
but I will also say this. I do believe that people can understand the time of year that it's likely to happen, which is the season, which is not the day or the year or knowing exactly when, but around this time of year, that's when we should be getting ready. And I believe that this has everything to do with the importance of what we were used to be considered holy days or times that were set apart. And they're set apart for these reasons. They're apocalyptic times for people to prepare, to get their families together, to watch the stars and the sun and the moon, and to see where their positions are, because you can know if that's the year. If you can look at these things and say, okay, the woman's going to give birth because the sun's in the wrong place, or you know what I mean, like the moon's
Yes,
in the
I'm
wrong place, it's the wrong
right.
color, it's doing weird, all these weird things. So anyways, a lot of the holidays have to do with preparation for an apocalyptic event, not times of celebration. I mean, some of them are like after they found out, oh yay, sweet, it's not going to happen this year, they would celebrate, you know, they would have a feast and stuff.
Oh,
But before
I
then,
never thought of that.
well, yeah, so like the two main ones are the solstices. So you have the summer solstice and the winter solstice, and those are the times whenever the sun will reach the tropics, you
Sure.
know, as it goes back and forth. From my perspective, as a part of the plasma apocalypse, there's two different versions of how this world ends. There is a trial by water, which is when the sun transcends the southern tropic and it becomes very large and red, and the world goes through what the Norse called Fimbulvinter, which is a great 7-year winter. It's just freezing cold, and then that's followed by the flooding of the world. And then, if it transgresses the northern tropic, and it will spiral inwards towards the North Pole and settle over what on medieval maps shows a gigantic magnetic mountain, a dark black rock at the
Black
center of the
Rock.
world. The sun settles over that, and basically, as it does that, daylight gets shorter and shorter and shorter and more focused and more focused. So it shortens the days. The days get hotter and hotter and hotter because of the focused daylight, and then because the daylight's getting hotter, you literally see the color of it turning colors, and it goes through a color spectrum shift into a blue spectrum. So then you have this blue light that seems to settle over this holy mountain, or this what could be considered as the throne of God or the seat of God or whatnot, at the heart of the world, at the center of the world, which to me makes sense. That's where the real Jerusalem would actually be, like where the real peaceful city, the real heart of the earth, you know, like that's I don't know, that makes sense to me. But anyways, that is what I believe to be the abomination that causes desolation, is the sun becoming hotter and hotter and more focused, and we lose daylight and we lose time, and time starts to actually shorten, and then the sun light itself starts to burn, and it causes the world to become desolate. People won't be able to go out during the daytime, and they see this settle, and it's a sort of anti-Christ. It's a sort of anti-light, or a false light, or a burning light, or a destructive light that causes death. But then, once we go through that polarity shift,
And is that one 7 years also?
Oh no, this one's actually way faster. So
Oh,
that's the good news is for us, that's actually the good news. I would prefer to go through the apocalypse by fire, which is the one that I believe we're going into, than the apocalypse by water. That one's
okay.
very difficult to survive and to make it through because the water's literally everywhere. It's freezing cold beforehand, and life is very slow going afterwards. It takes a very long time to pick up afterwards, but not a lot of people will survive that one. The fire one's way quicker, much faster. It happens a lot faster. Um, but then the good news also, because I always like to
So
focus on
how
the
long
on the
does
good
that
news.
one last? If it's, or do you know?
The which one?
The fire one, the shorter
Um,
one.
I'd say I don't know for sure, but I would guess from the point that the sun transcends the northern tropic. I've been thinking about a timeline for that, and my guess right now is about possibly anywhere from like 90 days to 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Okay.
Relatively short. I
Yeah,
can't say for sure though, because I'm still researching that.
sure. It's fascinating. And so the first book you wrote, have you read it to your son?
He reads it himself. He
Oh,
has
he
a
does?
copy down in his room. Yeah.
I love
I'll
it.
go downstairs and he'll be reading my book.
How many books do you have?
Just two so
Okay.
far. Yeah.
And the names are, you already said the one, but I don't think you mentioned the other one.
Yeah, they're all going to be a series called Ancient Oblivion. The first one is called The Plasma Apocalypse, and the second one is called Return to Hyperborea. The second one really focuses more on the Garden of Eden, in
Mhm.
short. So it focuses on a terrestrial paradise on Earth, the quintessential paradise islands. They're known as like the Hesperides, the island of the Hesperides, the westernmost isles, the Blessed Isles, Hyperborea. All these quintessential, stereotypical paradise origin places. It focuses on these, and I believe that exists physically at the North Pole, and that's also Atlantis too. I mean, that's
And is
amazing.
that where the Black Rock is too?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Black Rock is right square in the middle. So the Black Rock is what I call a plasma volcano, which ultimately is pretty much every volcano. But here's what happens, and this actually gets into the good news. That's why I started with the plasma apocalypse. That's the bad news. A lot of people are going to die, and it's going to be worldwide. It's the doom and gloom of the series or whatever. Although I don't see it as doom and gloom, because I know that those words mean dome and glowing, which is really a protective barrier in God's glory. Um, but anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, the geoplasmas inside of the Earth and plasma volcanoes. So that black rock at the center of the world is a magnetic stone. The reason that it's magnetic is has everything to do with what comes out of it every other cycle. Right now, nothing is coming out of that mountain except for possibly inner Earth wind and air and whatever, possibly,
And
or it's
creatures.
just covered in water at the moment, possibly too. But when that island reemerges, when that mountain comes up out of the ocean, which I believe it does, and I believe that's exactly what the Beast of Revelation is discussing. And as a matter of fact, it literally says that there's 7 mountains in the north, and that's exactly what it's talking about. That the beast is made out of physical terrain and geography that rises up towards the end times, and they produce lights out of them. They're geoplasmas. So what happens is our world is pressurized. And the inner earth that's underneath us, or the hollow earth, is also pressurized, and it has its own pressure system. And gases upon gases are building up over time. And as those gases build up from various methods, you know what I mean? Just organic decay over time is enough.
Sure.
But as those gases release and fill up within the earth and up here on the surface where we live, there needs to be a pressure release, right? And that's really the crux of the plasma apocalypse is the pressure being released from this world. And that cleanses this world too. So what happens whenever the inner earth gases release at ridiculous speeds, traveling through the cracks and the crevices and the mountains and the volcanoes of our world, flying through them, all that friction ionizes those gases and they become plasma. mostly oxygen. There's a lot of gigantic plants and stuff that are down there that are creating a lot of oxygen. That will be our great oxidation event in the future as that returns and our world has a fresh supply of oxygen reintroduced. But anyways, imagine all of this oxygen bursts forth from the world. The most of it coming from the largest opening, which traditionally is this middle place on Earth at that mountain, which is, I like to call it Rupus Nigra or Mount Meru. It goes by many different names. It's the quintessential holy mountain. So what happens is the plasmas burst forth from this mountain, from this plasma volcano, and it creates a beam of light, a stalk, a pole,
Like
a
a laser?
column, like a laser. Yes, very much like, except for this is not so much like a laser,
That it
like
would
just
burn something.
that it would stay straight.
Oh,
But
okay.
this is plasma that interacts with the atmosphere and stuff too. So at first it'll just be a straight line that people see. It'll be a
Got it.
sign, right? Over the town, over the peaceful city or whatever, there'll be a sign that something has just been born up out of this cave or this earth. And then over time, or as it gets higher and higher into the atmosphere, it'll interact with the atmosphere and it'll start to split and it'll start to move, many people will interpret it in many different ways. So for example, Native Americans, I believe, regarded this as the bird of creation or the thunderbird. This bird that shoots straight up as the
Hmm.
totem pole does. This is what the totem pole is. It shoots straight up and then it spreads its wings at the top, which are these auroras as those plasmas spread out and create these auroras up high above the earth
Which
into the
is kind of
atmosphere.
what we have up north.
Yes, exactly. Except for that what we have up north is more of a ring that's just following the electromagnetic circuit that's up there.
Hmm.
But when these geoplasmas erupt, we will see poles of light that are shooting up from all of the different volcanoes and cave systems and openings that go into the earth. But the largest one is at the center of the earth. And that shoots up out of Mount Meru. Now, that mountain, this black mountain, that's the reason why it's magnetic. It's called a lodestone mountain. And all of the legends about this particular region say that people in ancient times could not get close if their ships had any kind of metal because it would become a shipwreck island. Yeah, they would just be pulled on the water towards this mountain, faster and faster, and they would crash. So they had to start trying to find ways around that, building their ships and stuff without metal or whatever. And this is where I think actually in my second book I talk about how this is the origin of piracy and how like these are the original pirates. Like the word pirate is literally lights. It means lights. It's ot is Hebrew plural, and in pyre just means light basically in ancient languages. But anyways, those are the people from the lights or whatever. And our Okay, so you got Mount Meru, all of that electrical charge for a millennia, for the whole millennial rule of Christ or the golden age or whatever, charges that mountain, and that mountain's drawing minerals to it through the magnetics that is created by these plasmas and electricity. So it draws all these minerals to it, and and all of these become magnetized. And the whole island is magnetic, actually, but Rupus Negra is the strongest of those. It's literally a gigantic magnetic mountain. But it's surrounded by these quadrants, these four smaller islands that create a circular continent, and they're separated by four rivers that come from this
Like the Garden
gigantic
of
lake.
Eden.
That's yes, exactly. It's the Garden of Eden, basically. And around that, it's also a valley. So I like to study the geography of that place too, not just like, oh yeah, it's great, everyone lives forever and that's it. No, I want to know all the details of this place. So I'll give you like some examples, right? So there's walls all the way around Eden. And if we look at these medieval maps of the circular continent that's there,
Right. In the maps. I've seen lots of them.
yes, and you can actually watch it go underwater over time when you compare the different maps over time, right? Like it actually shows the water levels rising and rising. Like the floodwaters weren't just done. Like the pressure is still building inside of the earth, which is pushing up more water as time goes. But the time's going to come when there's going to be fluctuations in that pressure and the water will be released. And then therefore the water levels drop suddenly. And then phantom islands that people didn't think were real all of a sudden will emerge.
Available.
But anyway, so this is basically the subject matter of like my second book. So this place is important because of the energy of this area.
I
The
bet you're
that
dying to go there.
I mean, I feel like I'm, from there. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like a vibe, like I resonate with this.
Well, did you see yesterday that there was a young Asian man that flew his own airplane to Antarctica?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just love him for that. I wish a lot of people would do that all at once.
Well,
But isn't that interesting? Because I hadn't thought about the magnetic thing. Was it Doc or Captain or Admiral Robert Byrd or whatever his name is that um, literally said he was pulled into a hole and it was beautiful. There was all kinds of like tropics after he went through the snow. Do you know about that?
Yeah, that's his alleged secret diary.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like,
It would make sense why the airplane was being pulled.
yes, that makes a lot of sense actually to me. And not only that, but he met allegedly these inner Earth beings that lived down inside of the Earth that were gigantic in stature, and they had a message of peace for him. They said, "You're an ambassador of the world. We're going to send you back, and you need to tell them a storm is coming." Literally, this is what those beings said. And they're not being figurative. They're not being symbolic like, "Oh, what we mean is nuclear war." Or no, they meant a storm, a tempest, a worldwide actual storm, a huge, massive, world-ending low pressure system as the atmosphere depressurizes and it creates a world storm up here on the surface. Literally a world storm. And as that happens, I get so excited. I'm sorry. Like,
No, I love
uh
it. I could just sit and listen.
so all right, so a huge part of this is that the atmosphere depressurizes, as I said, right? If this is true, and I have my own cosmology, I think there's a dome and I think there's a firmament and everything. And that to me helps to explain why there's pressure and all that. But even if somebody doesn't, regardless, take what resonates, which is the pressure needs to be released, right? And if there is a magnificent or a huge pressure release, right? um, Within academics, within the realms of science, there's something known as Archimedes' principle, right? So everyone has sort of heard the story of Archimedes, how he like jumped into a bathtub and then he ran around the town naked, screaming "Eureka, Eureka!" Like that. No one really understands what that is all about, but we glean the naked man running around from school teachings. But anyways, the reason why this was such a big deal is because he realized that when he jumped into this bathtub, as the story goes, right? I'm not saying it's real, but he realized that he's displacing the fluid that's inside of it, and that much that's equal to his body and the volume that was introduced, that much fluid left. So in simple terms, here's what it means for us. However much fluid, which is our atmosphere, leaves when it depressurizes will be equal to a buoyant force that increases all around us here on the surface, causing objects, people, animals,
Density to
and
change.
everything to float. Everything will
Right,
float
because density
for a
would
short time.
change.
Yes, the density is going to change, but the main thing that causes things to float is not so much how dense they are, because even the densest of objects will also float and get sucked up into the sky. It has to do more um, with the exchange of fluids. You know what I mean? So, like for example, I could put a rock in the bottom of a Coke bottle,
Mhm.
and there's no way it's just going to float up to the top. But if I shake it up and then I
Right.
open it up and depressurize it, that rock can go straight up to the top. So that similar things like that happen to us, and I believe that this is where the concept of the whole rapture comes from, and the sky god Kronos in ancient, Greek myths and legends eating his children as he sucks them up. There's also Native American legends about this sky god who sucked up all of its creation, or every human on earth basically. And this will reach a point of equilibrium, right? Where everything eventually, the depressurization is finished, and then
Right.
everything starts to float back down and come back down, right? And then we're finished with the whole apocalyptic cycle, which lasts about a week. It's about 7 days, and it's all finished. It's all done. And then we deal with the leftovers. We are the leftovers in that situation. which is really interesting.
So
That's
instead
the
of food, people should be buying anchors for their bodies. Put a little
uh
belt around and have an anchor. I'm
I
kidding.
I know. Like I I don't know. I don't know. Like a lot of people worry a lot about what they, should be doing or whatever to prepare. Me personally, although, I have little things like I have oxygen set aside so that I can breathe because it's going to be difficult to breathe whenever all the air is getting sucked up.
Mhm.
Um,
And
but
so, like, the ones you can buy, like, in Colorado, the little oxygen tanks or, like, the big
yeah,
one?
well, the more the merrier, I would
Yeah.
say. Like the, um,
So it's so funny
not too
because
big,
and then
but
what about, like, will it be safer to be somewhere else? Because wouldn't water and everything go?
yeah,
So
the oceans will disappear. So this next cycle, we won't have oceans. We'll have desert. We'll have electrical deserts the world across, and the world will become more like Mars looking, I guess you could say.
maybe
It,
that's
it'll
why
it'll
Elon
either
wants to go
be
there.
it'll either it is I think it's either tropical. It'll either be like tropical and very lush in the foresty areas, basically the mountaintops, which we call continents, right now. But at the bottoms of where the oceans are, it'll be land forever, which is mostly desert and all kinds of debris. People go treasure hunting and find crap that sank to the bottom of the ocean during our times or whatever. And Elon's talking. So hold on, let me talk about Elon and all
Yeah,
that
go for it. I can't
NASA.
wait.
So
I'm
check
not an
this out.
Elon fan, just for the record.
I'm not I don't like any of them, but I believe that NASA, Elon, and all of the space agencies are doomsday preppers. That's what they're doing. They're not leaving, going to the stars or whatever. They're practicing and they're testing out the limits of the world that we live in, which is a closed system. And they're trying to figure out because I believe that they have this ancient knowledge that's been passed down th- through these bloodlines and
That's
from
why they're so
generation to
afraid of climate
generation.
change and either that or they're using it to their end, I don't know. But yes.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with simply survival. You know what I mean? Like having power, like they have the power, they were set up from the beginning, right? Um, but they're getting ready to. Some people will actually leave. Some people, I believe, will blast off during the depressurization, aim for a giant hole in the sky, and they'll go out there into space or travel what I call the fractalverse or the heavens. They're trying to ascend up into the heavens. First and foremost, the conditions are different up there to allow people to live essentially forever, for a long time. There is no degradation of, cellular, your body falling apart and growing old
Sure.
and stuff like that. But not everyone will go, and there's not room for everybody to go. Only the top level people are going to be blasting off trying to leave this world behind. Their family members, they're making places for them. They're building and digging out little
Barracks.
shelters,
Yeah.
yeah, underground tunnel systems, whole cities and stuff, trying to get them set up so that they can survive and then come up out of these bunkers, hopefully to rule the world once more. And the world will be at their fingertips at a time where everything is falling apart. However, they're going to have a lot to contend with because it'll be a different place. It'll be a way different place. It's not going to be as easy to trick people or whatever during the millennial rule, which is another reason why I believe that there was during the Dark Ages. If I go back to the Dark Ages,
Sure.
there were what's commonly known today and referred to as saints, I guess, or martyrs. The martyrs of the saints specifically. These people had superpowers. These people had intuition beyond intuition. These people could read minds. These people could fly in some cases. And they were feared by these nobles. They were feared by people that wanted to trick
The
others and
tables
deceive
are
others and stuff.
turned.
Yes. And that's the whole point. We
That
go
would be a
through these.
great movie. I would love to see it.
I would too. Like I basically also feel like every single movie is an element of somewhere. You can find it. Every movie is us. It's things that have happened to us, either embellished or not, somewhere along this timeline, this cyclical timeline, you know what I mean? From the creation event all the way through the dark ages and stuff to modern times to sci-fi futuristic all the way to the destruction event, and then it starts all over. And we can see this, like we're being given the breadcrumbs and the clues and the hints from somewhere. God, Mother Nature, ourselves, collective subconscious or something. And then there's other things happening too, like the Mandela effect and all kinds of, like deeper weird things that are happening in the earth. But yeah, this is my
So
stuff,
you actually believe that there's what are we like, is the world in your mind a toroidal field and the firmament is kind of like the top of the field? Or do you even have
Similar.
an idea of what it is?
Like my cosmology and how I see the
As
world
far
still.
as, yeah, if you think, I mean, I know you probably don't think it's a globe.
No, I don't. So I believe that we have this dome above us, and it's not just a simple upside down bowl, but in general, that's the shape. It also has like a drooping part at the top middle portion,
Right.
and there's anomalies on that bowl. But it's made out of ice, I believe. So
Oh,
the
that's
gases
what
get
will
so
break.
cold. Yes, that's what happens. So I'll tell you exactly how it depressurizes, right? Scientifically. The gases get so far away from the quote unquote sun, which I believe is nearby, that they freeze. And they actually skip from a gas phase to a solid phase, and they just turn into ice. And that ice conforms to the shape of the magnetic field that is holding those gases in, which
Sure.
is the Earth's natural magnetic field shape, right? So it creates this sort of dome shape around the world. Now, this is what causes the depressurization. It's not the ice dome that's holding in all the pressure. It's helping a little bit, but what's holding in the pressure is all of the gases are diamagnetic and they're being pushed away by the magnetism.
They're pushing it away.
When the
Oh,
magnetism hits a neutral point, which is the middle of a polarity shift, whoosh, there is no magnetism to hold those gases in anymore,
it's the
and
opposite.
it lets go. All those gases rush to the apex, boom, and punches a hole into the sky.
So do
And
you think that's why they have CERN? They're trying to speed that up?
um, not so much. I believe that I don't believe any of the official reasons why they have CERN.
Right, same.
My number one thought is that they want to actually try to communicate with inner Earth beings. There's beings that live in the Earth, that are closer to the surface where we live, like, people probably call them like Bigfoots and leprechauns and whatever, all kinds of like beings that are basically alien looking that live close to the surface where we are. But there's an actual deeper level to our world, which in Hebrew is called Sheol
Right.
or Abraham's bosom or all kinds of different names for it, right? This is the hollow earth. And they want to communicate with these quote unquote Ubermen that live down inside of the earth. Um, and I believe that this is one of the reasons, like they want power. The people up here, that's all they care about. They're selfish and they're tricked by Satan. They're tricked by this negative charge that's in the world today. And they detonate quote unquote nuclear bombs, whatever those may be, in volcanoes, in inner earth entrances, down inside of the earth, against the dome. You know what I mean? Like they're trying to get out. They're trying to blow up their they're called Gog and Magog for me personally. This is what I
Right.
think Gog and Magog is their inner earth humanoid giant beings that are going to come up out of the earth one day. And they don't care. They don't want them to come and change the world and enlighten people or teach them anything. I got to fix my light on my TV. It
Yeah.
just totally turned off.
No worries. I saw that. No worries.
But yeah, that's what I think CERN's up to. I think they're trying to communicate actually by sending signals through the earth, which is exactly what they say they're doing. They also say they're trying to open up portals, you
Right.
know.
That's what I was thinking. It was some way to like get to an area they can't get to or open something up. Like they have in so many movies where they're kind of going through as like a gateway
Yeah.
or a stargate.
Well, everyone has their own path and they have their own, I like this, I don't like that, or whatever. I don't feel like I vibe and resonate with the things that the elite like or whatever. They like or appear to like ruling the world as it is today. I believe that the time to come is going to be a better world. Even
Yes.
though, even though it'll be a world that seems fantastic, like something out of Dungeons and Dragons or the Old Testament or whatever, maybe like a magical world, essentially.
Fantastical Beasts.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, those literally will come up out of the earth. Like, there's going to be all kinds of creatures that come up out of the earth. The pressure will just push them up to our world on one hand. On the other hand, if they're intelligent, they would come up here because our golden age is next. If it's inverse, like you were talking about the toroidal field, the
Mm-hmm.
charge below is the opposite of the charge above.
Right.
If this is the season of Satan up here, then
Mm-hmm.
guess what it is down there right now? So,
Wonderful.
all those beings that know would, if they're wise, they'll leave and they'll come up here. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that they can continue living in the world that's a golden age or whatever.
Do you think there's access to them other than
Yeah,
in Antarctica?
I think there's always anomalies and exceptions to everything.
Yeah,
That
me too.
that nothing is, you know, I don't like absolutes, really. Like, to me, there's only one absolute, and it's what people refer to as God. That's that's my absolute. But everything under that, I believe in all possibilities.
Yeah,
You know
I'm
what I
going to
mean?
take a quick sidebar because um, I found out that you don't really appreciate this certain person online. I'm not going to say their name, but I also came across this person and had an immediate reaction to just their voice. And I was curious if you have anything that you've ever researched that talks about how people's voices or their sounds that they make can indicate like more about the kindness of the person in general. Because the reason I asked that is the very first time I listened to that channel, I was like freaked out when I heard the voice. And then I thought, well, that's rude. This is me being a human. That's a good human. And don't judge somebody. That's wrong. And then I would keep listening. But then I was like, gosh, he seems like he's gaslighting people. He seems like he's using techniques and all of this different stuff. And so then I decided I was going to look up and see if anyone had had anything about him as far as a fraud goes. And it was the first time that I had ever really thought about voices as an indicator, because you know how sometimes people say that the look of somebody can indicate a little bit about their darkness or whether they're a true human. And so I was just curious if you've done any studies that have to do with sounds or voices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Most well. So I let's go back to the Bible for a second, right? The
Okay.
Bible indicates that the physical world is comprised of the spiritual world, that the invisible things of the world create the visible things, right? So, our voices are the invisible things, right? Our voices are vibrations that go out and then go into others,
Mhm.
planting seeds, actually sharing fruit or poisons with one another based on the vibrations that come out. And out of the overflow of the heart, a mouth will speak.
Yes.
So the condition of that heart will um,
Affect the
bless or
sound.
curse the vibrations that are coming out, and in turn putting a blessing or a cursing into other people, or they don't receive that, and
It's a choice.
they don't have fellowship with one another. That one will immediately recognize poison and just walk away and get away from it, right?
Yes.
Or whatever. Like, it doesn't phase them. They're not going to allow themselves to partake in that meal. So in addition, just as those words can possibly change another person for the better or for the worse, they will change also themselves. So that energy will start manifesting in different ways and forms, and the body will start to correspond to the energy that is growing inside of it. Sooner
Yeah.
or later, okay?
Yes.
Everybody's young at some point, but it doesn't matter. And then it also has an effect on the world around these individuals. You have some that are points of darkness, and they everywhere they walk, the plants wither, the people become sad and depressed, and the vibe
They
changes when they
suck the
walk in the
life
room.
out. Yeah.
Other people have light, life, and I'm glad that that person's here, you know? Like they walk in and I feel good, I feel better. I want to hang out and be closer to that person. These are the lights of the world. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yes.
So it's the age old battle between light and dark, you
But I
know?
just like having other ways to recognize it. And so that was the first time that had ever happened to me where I was kind of repulsed by the voice. And so now I'm listening really closely and I'm feeling like all of the people that I can for sure, like I know them or I've seen like actual evil come from them. Their voices have like this restriction on them. It's really kind of interesting to me. And so I just was curious. I think it's fascinating. So I'm kind of like you with all kinds of intuition and different things that happen in dreams. And I'm just every day fascinated. Like piloerection where you get like your goosebumps has been like so fascinating to me because you can't create a goosebump out of nowhere. Like it comes from the ethers and I get them all the time. And I think that's really cool. And it was funny because I told you on the way here, I was like kind of in a down mode because I had some issue with my car that was unexpected. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, and it just puts you in a different space. And I was really looking forward to hearing your voice. Like there's something about the way you are and how good your heart is and how you are wanting to share what you have to share. You're not judging what other people think, which is one of my big gripes with most Christians. You know, they're so intolerant. If I bring anyone on that has other things, the first question is, where's Jesus in this? You know, and it's like, well, I don't know. Where's Jesus in the math book when you're in kindergarten? I mean, Jesus doesn't have to be everywhere, even though he is, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the topic of religion. It's not the easiest to sort of navigate, you know, depending upon, especially if you're addressing you know, the whole world. Like, you know, you can't please all the people all the time or whatever. But me personally, where I come from with that is like this is really the heart of what I was saying. Like I don't care if people survive the apocalypse. I don't want everybody to survive. I want good people to survive. So the first preparation step I always tell people is this: work on this right here, because uh, if you make it to the next world, you're gonna have kids, and then they're gonna have kids, and they're gonna have kids. I don't want this to happen again.
Yeah.
Okay, I want good
Oh my
people.
gosh,
I want,
let's
you
keep this
know,
from happening again, please.
right. So that's the most important thing to me. You know, is that's the whole point of it, is the freedom of choice that we have to reject temptation. To, I mean, this is the biblical teaching, is to change ways, right? Not to change um beliefs, or like you know, like your knowledge on something. Knowledge is nothing without action. Knowledge is zero without backing it up by some sort of way that we live our lives. You know what I mean? I'm very much like a works kind of person when it comes to like faith versus works or whatever, all that stuff. I
Mhm.
love it. I love like the action of it, the opportunities to change, to make a difference, to grow, to contribute, to add to the world, to give gifts, because I have life flowing out of me, and that is what continually generates life within me, is giving it away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need to take, and that's one of the energetic signatures you can see from the other side, the other
Ooh,
team.
let's talk about that. I
They're
really like that
takers.
idea. Let's talk about energetic signatures because I think this is something that can really help people more than you could imagine. You know, like my thing with like starting to notice voices. There's a lot of signature moves that so-called Christians that aren't Christians do that they're evil. They're literally out there trying to take from people. They're
Oh,
grifting
I know.
and that happens across the board in all kinds of ways. So what are some ways that you've seen, what are the signatures that you've been really aware of that have helped you?
I'm not sure what you're asking me, honestly.
So if you're out in the world and you're trying to protect yourself from those people, because what happens is we get caught up with them sometimes by accident. They
Oh,
they
right.
fake us out, they do whatever.
Oh, yeah.
what are the things that you've started to look for? How have you learned to navigate
Right.
around those evil people?
Yes. So their weapons of warfare um are many. One of the things that they do is simply trying to recruit, right? Is to get under my skin, to to create within me the fruits of death that they themselves are giving away for free everywhere they go, just as I'm giving away the fruits of life. So they want me to eat a poisonous apple, whereas I'm trying to give one that, is healthy or whatever. So if they can get me, if they can get a rise out of me, they can get me angry, get me upset. And my mindset, because this happened to me, I had a revelation while I was driving on the freeway, because I used to have the worst issue with road rage. And I'm just
Uh,
like, look at all of these, right?
they're
And I'm
not
driving.
thoughtful drivers either.
Yes. Well, I mean, like, now I understand why. It's a season of Satan. It's a bunch of satanic people that don't even know it driving around. Like, I don't expect everyone to be the best drivers. But I got really upset one day, and I was actually, you know, probably cursing someone out loud. And I was trying not to curse, and I ended up saying, I really don't like those people. And then I realized a light bulb just went off in my head, like a bubble popped, and I went, that's not true. It's not that I don't like those people. That's me doing something to them, like I'm liking them, like an action that's coming from me. The reality and the truth is, I'm not like those people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thankful. And
Yeah.
then my whole attitude started to change. You know what I mean? So just and that's also a biblical verse, to be transformed by the renewing of your mind,
Mm-hmm.
in the book of Acts, I think it talks about that. But these are some of the things that I see, is just recognizing the actions of these people. So I can recognize the actions of my brothers and sisters almost never by their words. Almost never. Now keep in mind, body language and things of that nature can help, but that's not really the words themselves. Anybody
Right.
can lie. Anybody can deceive in this world the way it is. I think that in the next world, telepathy is actually coming back, but it's going to be a lot harder to lie. But for example, I can recognize, right? I don't need to hear another person tell me about what their personal beliefs are and what prayers they've said and how many times they've been baptized or whatever it may be. I I I saw the fruit that was coming from um my friend JT, or Understanding Conspiracy, or these guys that I know
They're so
have
nice.
they have light on the inside, and
Yes.
that light comes out. And I know, because I am light too, and I recognize
Yes.
myself in
Yes.
others, and inversely, I also know not to allow, this is the immature side of me that it's taken a very long time to, to train,
Mm-hmm.
which is not projecting myself and my light
Mm-hmm.
onto the darkness and constantly holding out hope
Trying to
for
fix it.
pure evil. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And like, for example, I'll do like call-ins. I'll take callers on my channel sometimes. And I know when there's a caller that's a troll, but they haven't come out and made it obvious. And I'm still trying to like hope and this and that. But
Yeah. You're
my
like,
spirit
oops,
is telling me,
accidentally
hang
hung up.
up. Yes. Yeah. Hang up the phone or whatever. But
That's
anyways, I mean, if we look with spiritual eyes, which
yes.
is really a sensing and a feeling and a vibing, if I'm vibing with somebody, then there's truth there. Like I'm knowing, there's a knowing that's happening. If I'm not vibing with somebody, something's off, and at the very least there's a sign saying not now,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is not for you right now. Back off. Go away from that, because that's not good right now, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or just straight up, that's evil and dark, like it, like so many of these televangelists that I've seen. Like, there's one in particular I'm sure everybody knows about, that just looks like a freaking demon from hell, like crazy eyes and
Oh,
just,
Kenneth Copeland.
yes. Ding ding ding.
I live in Dallas, which is where all these guys are.
Ah,
Oh, it is a viper's den here.
yeah,
And people
it's
are like, why
crazy.
don't you go to church? Well, it's infiltrated.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so this is so interesting. Right after, like I said, you and I are done talking, I'm going to go do my omens episode. And
Uh-huh.
one of the things that I'm going to bring up as far as omens of the apocalypse goes and the times that we live in is, I don't know if you saw this, but in Texas, they're getting ready to drop hundreds of thousands of flies into the air.
Flies or
The
mosquitoes?
government,
I thought it was
flies.
mosquitoes. Oh, then I didn't know about the flies.
Yes, flies. And I mean, they're dropping mosquitoes into different places too, like San Francisco.
Florida.
I know they're doing that
Yeah.
too, which is that's a sign of the
Horrifying.
times for me. Either way, you're not dropping butterflies, you're not dropping beautiful things
Dragonflies,
or whatever.
hummingbirds.
Yeah, it's just going to be a bunch of mosquitoes and flies and larvae and God knows what
Did they
nastiest
say why?
things.
That is a good
Yeah,
omen.
yeah, because they want to try to battle this other kind of fly. That's it. That's the logic. Fight flies with flies. They're gonna drop all kinds of
I've got
flies
a
on you
lot of people
guys.
to call and all my Texas people afterwards. Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah, so if you see some weird dark cloud of something,
I'll know what it is.
yeah, it's and also, there's the concept of Beelzebub, which is the lord of the flies. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Which is typically associated with Satan, and this is the season of Satan as well. And it's just and not only that, but it made me think of the movie The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. You see that one?
I haven't seen that.
It's pretty gross, but basically the dude turns into a giant humanoid fly, which
Yeah.
is disgusting.
Mhm.
And it reminds me of like all the parasites and nasty bacterias and viruses and stuff that are just seem to be flourishing within the human body in general across the world because of all the crap that we eat, basically eating like insectoids. You know what I mean? Like sugary, nasty, disgusting garbage that's not healthy. And I eat that stuff too sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I had sugar in my coffee earlier or whatever, and I know it's not good for me. But I'm just saying I'm not speaking from a condemnation point of view, but from an acknowledgement of that's the season we live in.
Right.
And these are the things that those who have a seed from the lost tree or the tree of the lost tribes of the tree of life is how I like to call us, those people. We
Thanks
know.
for including me.
Yes. These are things that we know. We feel these things. We know where home is,
Yeah.
and we know when we're wandering, you know.
Yeah. Well, so I have just a couple more questions. When you were younger, did you so going back to your comment about telepathy and then thinking about like how I get that goosebumps all the time, holy shivers, whatever you want to call them. There's times I'll have it for like 3 hours. It's just feels incredible and I don't know why. Other than I'm just, making myself lunch, it's very strange. But I do wonder sometimes if that isn't an indicator of, some sort of like gases or energy or something that is around that wasn't around because I never used to do that just out of nowhere. Like I would
Yeah.
get them if I saw like a really cute Hallmark commercial or whatever. And so, do you have any? I know you said you have the intuition stuff, but when you were a little kid, did you have powers or think you had powers? Because, like, I was so frustrated that I couldn't talk to people without talk to animals and I was really frustrated that I couldn't move things with my mind. Like where did I come up with the fact that I thought that that was something I could do? I don't even know.
Yeah. Um, well, I can vividly remember practicing moving things with my mind when I was a child. Like
Same.
I was laying in bed. I think this is a particular memory I can think of. I was laying in bed and my bedroom door was open and I thought I saw it kind of swivel. And there was no air conditioning on or anything, right? And then I felt like I did that. And so
Right.
I was like focusing and I was trying to like push it farther and like make it go. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to
Yes.
practice working out all the different ways that I could do that. And then when I was older, I started practicing walking around with my eyes closed so that I could just
Oh,
sense the world around me without depending upon physical vision. And I got better at it and I got so much like when I started doing this, it was really a great spiritual exercise.
I think
I
that
got
would be awesome.
yeah, at first you can't go very far, and you realize how dependent you are on the physical world or your senses or whatever. But then after a while, you start feeling things out, and you not only can you hear and stuff like that, but you just feel energy. You feel where things are denser and where
Yeah.
they're lighter. And I don't know how to describe it, but it's a
No, I
really
get it.
fun
And
practice.
really, that's what they say Wi-Fi can do now, because Wi-Fi didn't used to be able to do this, but they say that Wi-Fi can see our bodies in
It
our house,
can. I
where
looked
it
that
is.
up.
Yeah.
I have Comcast, and it's like, hey, did you know you can track everything in your house using your Wi-Fi? And I'm like, let me see this. Hold on.
So it kind of
Like,
makes sense that you would be able to do that. And it's
of course.
interesting. It's almost like they've tried to copy everything that we can do with machines. But it does make me wonder about telepathy and healing people, even, because a lot of people would say this is really new age conversation, but there's healings and
What does
speaking in
that
tongues
mean?
and
Like,
all kinds of stuff in the Bible too. And
exactly.
I just think sometimes people like really shrink the box that God's allowed to be in, which is why I'm not at a church. But I find it fascinating only because I've had so many different experiences, and it's fun to talk to somebody that did the same thing. How old were you when you were trying to move the door?
Let's see. Probably somewhere around like 6 or something.
Right.
Somewhere around there.
Okay. So I was a little bit older. I had convinced myself also that I moved a pencil, and then I was like, I wanted to move everything,
Yeah.
and so
This is literally biblical where Jesus says if you tell that mountain to be
well, that's
removed,
true.
you
That's
know what I
true.
mean? Like that's not a door. That's not new age. That is Jesus like. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like those are powers and even Jesus says like people come after me they'll have greater powers than these or whatever.
Right. And
Anyways, I'm
he's
like
the
I don't
pioneer and the perfecter. Right. He's the
yeah.
first one, but he perfected it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't know. Like I understand why people would think that like hearing me talk like, "Oh, that's very new agey because I'm unfamiliar with everything you just said." But
But I appreciate you
like
grounding it in biblical stuff. So I think that's awesome.
thanks. I mean,
Yeah.
like when I think of new agey, I also have my own little, how I see that. I see it as very just hippie, kind of carefree, not really thinking about a lot and just very accepting of whatever. Like to me, that's kind of new agey or whatever. Or I don't know, there's all kinds of different like areas. I don't like name tags a lot. I just like
Same.
action. I like
Yeah.
being about it. I like walking that walk, you know what I mean? And balancing my studies and my knowledge or perceived knowledge that I have so far
Right.
with how I apply it and what I'm doing with it, you know?
Do you think it's possible that it won't explode and that it will just do something else? That I'm not saying that the pressure wouldn't be there, but that maybe it's not as great and that it would still upend a lot of stuff, but not like explode the ice.
Yes. Well, we've gone through that, I think. I've seen evidences for us actually going through cataclysmic cycles. For me, the apocalyptic cycle is the big, huge destruction. It's the complete cleansing of the entire earth. But I've seen that we've gone through little tiny shifts in between the deluge, which for me, that's the last time that the sky ripped open and everything. You know what I mean? The oceans were literally created, and I could tell you how the oceans were created too. Do you want to hear?
Of course.
So the deluge, all that water. So some of it just came up from within the earth because the earth has its own source of water. But the water that comes down from the heavens in buckets and buckets for 40 days and 40 nights is created up in the heavens because, like I said, if you have these beams of ionized oxygen reaching up into the highest parts of the heavens, and then the sky opens up and you have ionized hydrogen coming down in these plasma tentacles and they smash through one another,
Oxygen and water.
it creates
Or
water.
oxygen, yeah,
Yeah.
hydrogen. Wow. And so, yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome. I hope people go to your channel and watch. How many different things do you do? Because you do a call-in, you do the omens. What else do you do? Because you also have like music or something.
Well, I dabble in different things. My main segments is the Plasma Apocalypse, Ancient Oblivion, and Omens. Those are my
Omens.
top three. I also have like Truth in Movies, which I'm gonna start getting back into, or I
Oh yeah,
decode
somebody
all the
just wrote that in
movies.
the chat, truth in movies. And actually
Yes.
that is one of my favorite ones that I saw was you going through a movie. I don't even think I've ever heard of the movie before, but it was incredible just to watch how detailed it was, cuz I do it with just basic Freemason stuff cuz it's in every movie.
Mm.
And so yeah, so cool. Oh my gosh. I love it. So please follow this gentleman. And then I do have all your stuff. I just copied what you had and I put it in the description box. So if there's anything I missed, just let me know and I will add it. And then where can people get your book? Books,
Oh,
two books.
well, there's two options. If you just want a vanilla copy of the book, you can just get it off of Amazon. Just type it into Amazon. You can type in my name, or you can type in the book name. I also sell the books. I have my own copies here at the house where I autograph it. If you buy it from me, you get an autographed copy. You get merch. I have make my own bookmarks and stickers and mini posters, um, business
So you're
cards,
an
all kinds of
artist as
stuff.
well.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Did you have that in your family?
Yeah, my mom, she was an artist. She liked to paint and stuff like that. I like to make things. Like I'm not really like good at drawing per se, but like, like this, like I made all that stuff in the background and I like to be creative. But if people want to like support me, the best way right now for me is, go to my website. My whole website is amazing. All the stuff I'm talking about, there's audio visual examples all
Hundreds,
across the
hundreds and
website,
hundreds of stuff.
constantly
Yeah.
updating it. And then there's my Patreon, which is, I have a credits at the end of my each show, and people can have their name on the screen or whatever. Those are the main ways that I make a living basically. And this is my living. So this is how I support my children. This is how I pay bills, keep the light on and stuff, is sharing
That's
my
awesome.
path with other
How
people.
many people did you have to get to before you could do that?
Um as far as a subscriber count, I think I quit working at T-Mobile, which was my last like kind of regular job I had
Uh-huh.
like 4 years ago. So I think I probably
Okay.
had like
60?
60,000 or
Yeah.
something. Pretty
Yeah.
close.
But then you also had merch and, the books
Nah,
and oh, you
no,
didn't?
I
Okay.
had nothing.
Wow, you're
Yeah.
amazing.
Well, the thing was like I couldn't work anymore. I was going through really bad depression and anxiety, so I literally couldn't work anymore. And I kept calling in sick and
I'm
going to the
so glad you
doctors and
figured it
stuff.
out because you don't seem like you have it at all anymore.
Oh, thank you. You know.
I mean, everyone has, their ups and downs. Like I told you today, I had my little roller coaster with my
Yeah.
unexpected stuff with a brand new car. Like it makes no sense to me, but
Well, I'm
any,
better than I used to be, but it was pretty bad at first.
yeah,
But I just rolled the dice. I made just enough to get by, and I said
you're like, you
I'm
know
gonna
what?
commit to this.
I'm going to be
I'm gonna do
free.
this. Yeah.
And then you probably started feeling better just not spending the lion's share of your time someplace you hate.
Yeah. I can't even believe I did that now. Like, especially with how high the prices of everything are getting and stuff. And I tell my son when we go shopping, like when we go grocery shopping, I still have food stamps and stuff. So I'll be like, anything in the store is yours. It's food stamp day or whatever. And, he'll say, okay, a steak or whatever. And I'm like, wow, it's $20. You know that the person that's working at the front, they have to work a whole hour just to get one of those. You
Oh,
know what I mean? Like I teach them about like
that's so good.
how much time of a person's day they have to actually just give up and be a slave for just to get. I mean, this is actually in the book of Revelation where it says that the prices would increase.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was the other thing I liked about your channel too, because I did watch the one you just recently did about breakups or trusting people after they cheat,
Oh
or
yes.
I forget what it was. It was so good. And as somebody who like, that's what I spend a lot of my time doing is working with people and just kind of helping them detangle stuff, right? Because it's so much easier for someone else to see where your blind spots are and stuff. And so the whole time I'm watching you, I'm like, he did so good on his own figuring it out. But it
Thank you.
definitely, like, anytime you need help, you just give me a text or a call.
Okay, sweet. I might have to take you up on that because that's
Absolutely. It
my
would be fun.
Achilles heel.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. And thank you again, Jay. It was wonderful. I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor.